This is George-Ade, and this was written in 1899. And this was just before that big new year. And as a matter of fact, there is talk that Ade wrote it to spike the ideas that everybody had at that time that the year 1900 would bring the millennium. This is called The Fable of Successful Tobias and some of his happy New Years. A little music. I think just a little touch of that low-down, dragged-out music. That blues. That rotten, raunchy, stinky, hairy blues. Da-da-da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee. Oh, yeah. Once there was a financial heavyweight. The milestones, listen to this beautiful line. Once there was a financial heavyweight. The milestones of whose busy life were strung back across the valley of tribulation into the green fields of childhood. Like most of our aristocrats, he got his start out among the corn rows. His youth was spent very happily, but he did not get on to the fact until years later. He used to work 14 hours per for his board and his clothes, and his only dissipation was to take in the Swiss bell ringers once every year. At the close of each year, on New Year's, he was permitted to attend a watch meeting at the Mount Zion Church. The watch meeting is a form of gaiety invented a long time ago by someone who was not feeling well at the time. The outfit were supposed to sit for 3 or 4 hours on the hard benches, meditating on all the low-down, ornery things that they had done during the old year. Some of them had to hurry in order to crowd this line of meditation into a brief 4 hours. Now and then, a local high guy with throat whiskers would arise and talk for a short time on the subject of death, and wonder how many of those present would be taken in by the Grim Reaper during the next year. Just at midnight, the sexton would toll the bell so as to cheer everyone up. And then each of the merrymakers would go home and eat a piece of mince pie and a bellflower apple and retreat to the feathers, feeling a little ashamed for having stayed up so late. Later on, after Tobias moved into town and began to wear store clothes and stand-up collars and put oil on his hair, he encountered another kind of New Year's Day. The era was that of the open house. All the women received, and the men went over the entire circuit and traded job-printed cards for something to eat and drink. This made it fine for those who were not ordinarily invited into the best homes. The men roamed about in great flocks, and usually they had a hard finish, for it was customary in those good old days of democratic simplicity for every true gentleman to take a drink when it was proffered by the hand of a lovely woman. And lovely women seemed to regard it as her assignment to put all of the nice young fellows to the bad on New Year's. It was customary to mix tea, coffee, sherbet, lemonade, eggnog, artillery punch, fizzerine, and straight goods, until the Happy New Year looked like a scrambled rainbow, and the last caller was sozzled to the ears. Old Tobe used to go out every New Year's Day to meet the good lookers and fuss around with them, for those were his salad days. He made it a combination salad and philandered about a bit, about 7 years before he took the big risk and bought a home with a mortgage attachment and finally settled down. And then the Happy New Year's began to have an entirely new meaning. He drew a red mark around January 1st, for that was the day when he had to make the books balance and take up some big note that was hanging over him like a storm cloud. His usual plan for celebrating the Happy New Year was to sit in his office, figuring on how to trim the payroll and sneak up on selling prices and keep out of the sheriff's hands for another 12 months. But, as it comes to some men, the time came when Tobias could take out a pencil on December 31st and compute a net profit big enough to fill a furniture van. To all intents and purposes, he had come to the high ground where he could now afford to sit down for a while, by George, and enjoy the scenery. He certainly possessed all the accessories of a Happy New Year. He had a bankroll, a house on the boulevard, and a wife who was slowly but surely worming her way into society. He had a son attending a high-priced university in the East and gradually accumulating a phony Oxford accent, while his daughter was at a school which used the French novel as its textbook. So, after All these years of struggling, Tobias knew what it was to have a genuinely happy New Year. For when the children came home for the holiday vacation, the busy Mrs. Tobias gave a big dancing party on New Year's Eve, to say nothing of a couple of luncheons and a formal dinner. At these glittering functions, the family did what it could to keep Tobias in the background. For while he was a corker when it came to doing a fountain pen specialty with a checkbook, he was a frosted turnip when chucked into a suit costing $100 and put down in a Marie Antoinette apartment with a lot of Chaunceys who had been educated in the East. He celebrated the glad New Year by standing around in doorways and looking mournfully at the lightweights who were doing the cotillion, and each of them having the time of his life. He saw his wife hobnobbing with a human pickerel whose only excuse for being on earth was that he looked well in evening clothes. Daughter was dancing with a lovely specimen of the night-blooming rounder. And son was out passing cigarettes around. And no one was paying any attention to the provider. So he made a quiet retreat to his own room and had a glass of milk sent up and read the market report and managed to put in a pleasant evening after all, seeing the old one out and the new one in. Do you want to hear the greatest moral of all? Just bring that music in. Don't leave it go. The greatest moral of them all. This is George-Ade's moral to his fable. Moral. One New Year is just about as happy as another. How's that for realism?